Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Certainly. In this tutorial, we will explore how to create a responsive grid layout using PHP and Tailwind CSS. We'll go through the steps of setting up Tailwind CSS, creating a PHP script to output grid items, and ensuring that our layout is responsive. Overview. 1. Setting up Tailwind CSS, install and configure Tailwind CSS. 2. Creating the PHP script, generate dynamic content using PHP. 3. Building the responsive grid, use Tailwind CSS utility classes to create a responsive grid layout. 4. Testing the layout, view the result in a web browser. Step 1. Setting up Tailwind CSS. To use Tailwind CSS, you can either include it via CDN for quick prototyping or install it via NPM for a more robust setup. Here's how to include it via CDN. HTML. Doctype HTML. HTML lang equals n. Head. Meta charset equals UTF-8. Meta name equals viewport content equals width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0. Title responsive grid with Tailwind CSS/title. Link ref equals https://cdn.jsdeliver.net/npm/tailwindx at 2.2.19/dist/tailwind.mincss rel equals style sheet. /head. Body. Div class equals container mx auto p4. PHP include grid.php. /div. /body. /html. Step 2. Creating the PHP script. Create a file named grid.php. This file will generate some sample grid items dynamically. Here's a simple example where we use an array of items. PHP. $items equals. Title equals item 1, description equals this is the description for item 1. Title equals item 2, description equals this is the description for item 2. Title equals item 3, description equals this is the description for item 3. Title equals item 4, description equals this is the description for item 4. Title equals item 5, description equals this is the description for item 5. Title equals item 6, description equals this is the description for item 6. Echo div class equals grid calls 1 md grid calls 2 lg grid calls 3 gap 4. For each, $items as $item. Echo. Div class equals bg white rounded lg shadow mdp4. H2 class equals font bold text lg. $item title. /h2. P class equals text gray 600. $item description. /p. /div. Echo /div. Step 3, building the responsive grid. In the grid.php script, we use Tailwind CSS classes to create a responsive grid. Grid, this class initiates a grid layout. Grid calls 1, on small screens, display 1 column. MD grid calls 2, on medium screens, greater than or equal to 768px, display 2 columns. LG grid calls 3, on large screens, greater than or equal to 1024px, display 3 columns. Gap 4, adds spacing between grid items. Step 4, testing the layout. Now that we have our HTML and PHP files set up, you can test the layout. 1. Save the HTML code in a file named index.php. 2. Save the PHP code in a file named grid.php. 3. Place these files on a server that can run PHP, like XAMPP, MAMP, or a live server. 4. Open index.php in your browser. You should see a responsive grid with items that stack on smaller screens and adjust to multiple columns on larger screens. Conclusion. In this tutorial, we created a responsive grid layout using PHP and Tailwind CSS. By leveraging Tailwind's utility classes, we were able to quickly build a responsive design that adapts to different screen sizes. Tailwind's flexibility and ease of use allow developers to create stunning layouts with minimal effort. Feel free to customize the grid items and styles as per your project requirements. Certainly. In this tutorial, we will cover how to create a responsive grid layout using PHP and Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework that makes it easy to build responsive designs quickly. What you will learn: setting up a basic PHP environment, installing Tailwind CSS, creating a responsive grid layout with PHP and Tailwind CSS. Prerequisites: a basic understanding of PHP, a local server environment, like XAMPP, MAMP, or a live server. Composer installed for package management, optional but recommended. Step 1. Setting up your PHP environment. 1. Install a local server. If you haven't already, install XAMPP or MAMP to run PHP scripts locally. 2. Create a project folder. Inside your server's height docs, XAMPP, or www.mamp directory, create a folder named Tailwind Grid. Step 2. Install Tailwind CSS. To use Tailwind CSS, you can either use a CDN or install it via npm. Here we'll use the CDN for simplicity. 1. Create an index.php file in your project folder. 2. Add the following HTML and PHP code to index.php. PHP. Doctype HTML. HTML lang equals n. Head. Meta charset equals UTF-8. Meta name equals viewport content equals width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0. Title responsive grid with PHP and Tailwind / title. Tailwind CSS CDN dash. Link ref equals https://cdn.jsdeliver.net/npm/tailwindx at 2.2.19/dist/tailwind.min/css rel equals style sheet. /head. Body class equals bg gray 100. div class equals container mx auto p4. h1 class equals text 3xl font bold text center mb6 responsive grid layout /h1. div class equals grid calls 1 sm grid calls 2 md grid calls 3 lg grid calls 4 gap 4. php // sample data. This could come from a database. $items equals title equals item 1. Description equals description for item 1. Title equals item 2, description equals description for item 2. Title equals item 3, description equals description for item 3. Title equals item 4, description equals description for item 4. Title equals item 5, description equals description for item 5. Title equals item 6, description equals description for item 6. Title equals item 7, description equals description for item 7. Title equals item 8, description equals description for item 8. For each $items as $item. Echo div class equals bg white p6 rounded lg shadow lg. Echo h2 class equals text xl font semi-bold. $item title /h2. Echo p class equals mt2 text gray 600. $item description /p. echo/div /div /div /body /html. Step 3, Explanation of the code. 1. HTML structure. The HTML structure is basic. We include the Tailwind CSS from a CDN link in the head section. 2. Container. We use a Tailwind utility class to create a responsive container that adjusts according to the screen size with MX Auto for horizontal centering and P4 for padding. 3. Grid layout. We define a grid with grid calls 1 SM grid calls 2 MD grid calls 3 LG grid calls 4 gap 4. This means 1 column on small screens, 2 columns on small devices, SM, 3 columns on medium devices, MD, 4 columns on large devices, LG. The gap 4 class adds spacing between grid items. 4. PHP loop. We create an array of items, which can be replaced with a database query in a real application, and loop through each item to generate a grid item with a title and description. 5. Styling. Each grid item has its own background, padding, rounded corners, and shadow for a card-like appearance. Step 4, Run your application. 1. Start your local server, example XAMPP. 2. Open your browser and visit http://localhost/tailwindgrid/index.php. You should see a responsive grid layout displaying your items. As you resize the browser window, you will notice the grid adjusts according to the screen size. Conclusion. Congratulations! You've successfully created a responsive grid layout using PHP and Tailwind CSS. This is a foundational setup that you can build upon, such as integrating with a database, adding more styling, or implementing interactivity with JavaScript. Tailwind CSS's utility classes make it easy to customize your design as needed.